Well, good morning, everybody. I'll call the meeting of the July 19th, 2019 Juvenile Justice Board to order. And if I could ask everybody to please join me in standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, thank you all for joining us today in the dog days of summer for the Juvenile Justice Board. And I'd like to welcome everybody that's here and participating. And as we traditionally do, if we could take a moment to go around the table and do introductions, that would be great. Ms. McGee, can we start with you?
Sure. I'm Pat McGee with the Department of Juvenile Justice, Office of Prevention and Victim Services.
Kelly Hammersley with Department of Juvenile Justice.
Yvette Boatwright, Court Administration. I work with the Juvenile Diversion Program.
Rob Parkinson, Hillsborough County Criminal Justice Liaison.
Judy Royston, Department of Juvenile Justice.
Jennifer Cristiano-Ax.
Elvin Martinez Jr. with Bays, Florida.
Kurt Royka, Tampa Police.
Rocky Brancato, Public Defender's Office.
Davy Alarabor, Pace Center for Girls.
Rob Phillips, CCO, Phoenix House.
Linda Sessions, Hillsborough County Children's Services. Fence.
Okay, well, I also want to welcome everybody in the audience that's joining us today. Our public defender, Julianne Holt, is here. Thank you for being here. And if everybody's had an opportunity to review the minutes of our last meeting, I would entertain a motion to approve them or make any changes.
Motion to approve.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, thank you very much. The minutes of our last meeting have been adopted. So we will move on to the board priorities section of the agenda. And I hope you'll notice that our priorities are shifting a bit. We have removed several of the priorities because they've been completed. So the Domestic Violence Civil Citation Program was one of our priorities as a board, and thanks to all the stakeholders and a lot of hard work, that program has been adopted. Also, our public awareness priority has also been put in place, partnering with Crime Stoppers, and mental health court has been established in the 13th Judicial Circuit as well. So while they're no longer going to appear under our priority section of the agenda, I'm hopeful that our stakeholders and partners will continue to provide updates regarding those issues as we go along, because this is, in my opinion, a perfect forum for the community to be informed about such wonderful initiatives. So with that being said, our Public Service Award in your packet today, you will see, and before I go any further, if just for the record, our court administrator, Gina Justice, is unable to attend today, and also Gary White with the Hillsborough County Anti-Drug Alliance is unable to attend today. But you'll see in your packet, there's a nomination form for the 2019 Service Excellence Award from the Juvenile Justice Board. And this has been put together and vetted with Mr. White chairing this committee. Ms. McGee helped out, Mr. Trepper from the Prodigy program, and Mr. Brancato, I believe, also assisted with the formulation of this nomination. So nominations are due September 25th, and that gives us a couple of months to get the awards and everything in order to do a presentation at our November board meeting. And the purpose of this award is to recognize a juvenile justice professional in Hillsborough County who has dedicated their career to working with children in either prevention, probation, or residential or detention. And so we hope to carry this on as we move forward, and I hope that all the service providers will take note of this, or even if you're just a stakeholder and you happen to work with somebody who does an outstanding job working with children, that you refer to them, then hopefully you'll consider making a nomination as well. The committee will receive those in September, and then we'll convene, we'll review the applications, and then submit to the executive committee a recipient of the award for the November meeting. And at the executive committee meeting, we also discussed making this an annual award, and it's kind of uncomfortable because she's in the room, but we've decided to name this after Julianne Holt, and recognizing somebody for their dedication to public service, in recognition of Ms. Holt's decades of dedication to juvenile justice. And so I'm very proud to be able to do that, and thank you for all your service. Any questions regarding that? Okay. Community connections. I don't know if Ms. Cristiano has an update in regard to that. Okay. So we're still working on that. As I mentioned at the executive committee meeting, I spoke with Ms. Terminello at ACTS. She has been named the CEO of the organization, and so she has committed to me that once she gets settled in, that we'll start going full speed ahead with the community connection piece. And we also identified at the executive committee that we identified a new priority, and that is working with the community to help develop evening reporting centers and look at what the community can do to support our regional detention center here in Hillsborough County. So we haven't necessarily formed a committee in regard to that yet, but we will as we move forward. And I know that Ms. Royston has some information regarding the evening reporting centers as well.
Okay, thank you, Elvin. On the handout I gave you, so the new DRE, Detention Risk Assessment Instrument, started on July 1st. Kids that are arrested and brought to the JAC are scored, and then they are placed on some sort of detention status. It could be intensive home detention with EM, or intensive home detention with EM, or plain home detention. As we look at this, I've been keeping the numbers of the youth, if we had an evening reporting center, the youth that would have scored 9 to 10. I started July 1st. These are the numbers through July 19th. I would have liked to have kept a 21-day period, which is what they're usually held for, but since the meeting was coming up. So with the evening reporting center, these are the kids that score 9 to 10. That does not mean that this is the total number. Kids that are on some sort of supervised release in the community, if they violate, the judge, we take them back for a detention hearing, and the courts have the ability to either bump up or bump down based on their behavior. So we might have a youth who is on the least restrictive home detention and reoffends and goes back for a detention hearing, gets a technical violation. We bring him back before the courts for technicals. The judge can bump up in that case. But these were the ones that definitely scored for evening reporting. So those are the zip codes. The department has some Title II funds available that they opened up to Hillsborough County. I know there's Safe and Sound submitted a proposal, and there might be another proposal coming from Freddie Barton. So I'm trying to submit them this week. And hopefully we'll hear something further about those funds.
I believe the other proposal is possibly coming from One More Child and Mr. Babb.
Keith Babb, I'm sorry. So any questions so far?
The number to the right of the zip code is the number of
Kids.
kids scoring
Absolutely, yes.
9 or more.
9 or 10 on the DRE.
Mr. Benjamin.
Thank you. Judy, I just had a question about the youth that are committed to pending placement. How
Yes,
long
sir.
are they in there?
Depending on when the bed becomes available.
Okay.
So each youth that is in detention, they have identified a risk level for a residential program. Could be non-secure, could be high risk, max risk. So they are detained till their bed is available. There's 7 youth ready and waiting to go.
Okay, thanks.
Any additional questions for Ms. Royston?
Kind of looking at this in the vacuum because I don't know the previous numbers, but the absconders, 16 absconders,
Yes.
is that high and is that in response maybe to the new DRE?
No, and those are probation absconders.
Okay.
Kids on supervision. If the DRE, it would be just a regular pickup order if they were not on any type of supervision. These are kids that were on supervision that we have not been able to locate. And a petition's been filed, an affidavit, and then the judge has issued a pickup order for abscond.
Any other comments? Ms. Blumberg?
Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to add that we do have a community-led detention advisory board meeting on the first Friday of every month at 10 a.m. at the Juvenile Detention Center. And we are working very hard with the new acting superintendent, Miss April Walker, to get some programs in for the youth and work on rehabilitation of the facility. So just wanted to put that out there as well.
Could you send me the notice for that, and then I can share it with everybody? And I'd like to attend those meetings so I can interface with them as well.
Absolutely. Mr. Barton is chair of that meeting, and right now I'm still acting as the secretary at the pleasure of the board.
Excellent.
Alvin, I didn't go into everything. I was just doing the evening
Sure.
reporting center. Do you want me to just go into the probation and detention update?
Yeah, just let me make, I can't help myself, so let me just make a couple of comments regarding the detention and the evening reporting center priority. I appreciate very much the executive committee considering that and making this a priority, and for the following reasons. We are, the juvenile justice continuum is making a major shift in the way that children are evaluated and how they're going to be supervised during the detention period. The department now has created a continuum of detention services, and it's expected later this year that there'll be, right now probation is doing it, but it's expected there'll be a service provider providing supervised release tracking services to monitor the children on home detention, intensive home detention, and intensive with monitoring. And then the evening reporting centers is a huge portion of that full continuum, right? So I think that it's very important that our community has evening reporting centers. And even with the 2 that I understand are preparing to come online, it's still a huge opportunity for our community because the geography alone of Hillsborough County is such that 2 locations is probably not going to be a long-term solution to serve all of the children, right, based on location. So I think that the board can play a really excellent role in providing some interface with the stakeholders and that type of thing. The other thing, I think, in terms of the new detention continuum, is that it's not going to be a perfect system, right? And so there's a lot of pitfalls and a lot of things that could occur that could be problematic, right? And the community could see those things happening, and we could go backwards in terms of what we're trying to accomplish in terms of public perception. So I think that we really need to work as a community together with law enforcement, with the stakeholders, with the department, with providers, to really focus on this new detention continuum because it's in the best interest of the children being served in the system. But we also need to make sure that it's done with community support and as a team effort, in my opinion, as well. So I very much appreciate everybody indulging me to consider making that a priority of the board, and I look forward to working with the community, representing the board to make sure that that process occurs as smoothly as possible and supporting the department in that regard as well. Okay, I'm done now. So
Okay.
we'll go to Department of Juvenile Justice updates.
Okay, so under the July 2019, I have the supervised release numbers. Home detention with EM, intensive home detention, and intensive home detention with EM. 54 youth total. I have to do a shout out to Kelly Hammersley, my assistant chief. She has put together our supervised release plan. It's been quite the workload on the JAC, in addition to the probation officers. It's not anything we've done before. It used to be the detention center would hook them up on the EM, but our numbers are high. They were projected to be some of the highest in the state, and it is coming in that way. Orlando's, as far as the central region, Orlando's #1, and then we are #2 for kids out on supervised release. We have been, with the supervision and with the kids being on EM, I know we're filing a lot more detention reviews and bringing them back to court. The policy allows for 2 formal technical violations. We have a committee that meets every week, goes over the numbers, makes sure the kids are making themselves available, and we also discuss who we're taking back for a detention review. What was the reason for the violation? Did the probation officer try to see if there were any barriers to the kids not being where they said they were going to be? So we're working through the process. The courts have been really a great partner with us. Gina Justice got us in so that we could hook the kids up immediately on EM. The policy allowed for them to report to the JAC. We didn't want the kids having to travel another place to, it's transportation issues. You leave court, parents have to go to work, then they have to report to the JAC and get hooked up there. So working with Gina Justice and the court system, we have the ability, as soon as the judge orders it in court, our probation officers are hooking them up at court. So it's been a process. It seems to, we are ironing out the kinks as we go along. Any questions on that so far? Okay. Prolific offenders, we're up to 20. 7 in the community, 4 in secure detention, and 9 in county jail. This is the highest we've been on prolific offenders. These are kids that meet the prolific offender statute. There's certain, you have to be pending a charge, which is a felony, and Rocky can help me out here. You usually have 5 prior arrests, 3 of which are felonies where you have an adjudication. So they're pending court, but they meet the statute for calling them a prolific offender. They are also on a higher level of supervision with the probation officers. As far as probation numbers, absconder 16, committed 66. Those are youth that are in residential programs. Our numbers have never been lower. Every time I come here, we were in the 90s, then in the 80s. 66 is an all-time low. Aftercare 64, our numbers are at the lowest there. Probation walker plans is a type of supervision, 26. 379 youth on probation. Interstate compact are youth that come to live in Florida that are on some type of supervision from another state. We have 20. Intake kids or kids pending charges, 558. And then in secure detention, we have 35. As far as detention is concerned, their numbers are a little bit lower than usual. They are painting a mod along with fixing the air conditioning in another mod. So they've had to transfer some kids out to Pinellas or Manatee. I think their numbers of transfers out are probably about 5 or 6 kids, which would put them in the 40s, which is also low. And April Walker is now the interim assistant superintendent. I can send her name out if you need it. And that's it for updates from probation and detention. Any questions?
The 9 youth out of the 20 that are in the county jail, you're counting direct file juveniles?
Direct files, yes. And direct files for anybody, those are youth that the state attorney's office has bound them over to adult court for sentencing. Even though you go before an adult court judge, you can still get juvenile sanctions when you're sentenced. Our courts have really worked with the public defender's office and state attorney's office. We're seeing a lot more kids. It used to be they would go into the adult system and be put out on community control. And it doesn't help our kids. They can't do adult community control. They can't report in, they can't pay the fees, they don't have transportation, they're not adults. And they would violate and end up in prison. These youth that go before adult court, if they're sentenced back to the Florida Department of Juvenile Justice, we can recommend a residential treatment program. And then they would stay there in juvenile as part of their adult sanctions. If they violate, they go before an adult court judge for their violations. Questions? Okay.
Thank you, Mrs. Royston. And Ms. McGee, do you have any updates regarding prevention?
The only thing that I would probably like to mention, of course, is our training that's coming up, which is implicit bias training, which will be August the 2nd. It's 10:30 to 12:30. I believe it's at the training center here in Tampa. You can register on Eventbrite. I believe I sent you over the information, so I think we have about maybe 38 slots available for those that would like to attend. And lastly, we have our Restoring Hope Conference, which is sponsored, of course, by the Department of Juvenile Justice Prevention Office. It's October 29th and 30th. It's going to be at the Florida Conference Center at the Florida Mall in Orlando. And I'll be more than happy to send that information to you as well to be able to send out to the folks. And that's all I have for you.
Excellent. Any questions?
Just to add, there's some flyers that are placed next to the registration sign-in sheet on the implicit bias training in case people would like to pick those up.
Excellent. And I encourage everybody that has not attended that training to certainly participate. I think that it's training that I could do on a yearly basis and still learn something every year. So I really encourage our community to show up for that and to participate in that training. And thank you to the courts and to the department for organizing that. Okay, I don't believe we have any update on JDAI or racial ethnic disparities, do we?
I do have an update on JDAI. They are interviewing on July 30th. So hopefully we'll have someone new taking the position.
Okay. For those of you that don't know, Mrs. Blumberg has entered the free agency market, and she was our JDAI coordinator, and Davy is smiling because she's very happy that she's now working for the Pace Center for Girls. So as soon as we get somebody online with that, we'll, I'm sure, be meeting with them and bringing them up to speed and hopefully hit the ground running and pick up where Mrs. Blumberg left off there. And I don't believe there's any update in regard to Safe and Sound, so we'll move on to civil citations. And Ms. Boatwright?
Yes. For the month of June, the Juvenile Diversion Program received a total of 34 civil citations. 28 were from the community and 6 were from the school. In comparison, for the month of May, we received 71 civil citations, so that's quite the decrease, and likely because school is out, that accounts for the decrease in numbers, but we'll take it. In terms of the types of offenses that youth receive civil citations for, petty theft came in highest with a total of 19 charges. We did not receive any battery domestic violence charges for the month of June. So I think we're moving in the right direction in terms of managing the cases that we're receiving and working very closely with the Child and Family Counseling Program when we do receive battery domestic violence charges.
Any questions? Thank you very much. And Sins Fins?
Yes, good morning. Not much to report this morning, just that we do have beds available. Currently, we are just wrapping up our summer programs, just in case you want to know what we're doing with the youth. We just closed our summer camp, which is the 7 dimensions of health and wellness. And so we've covered, each week, we've had a different topic that we've worked with the youth on. So that's pretty much all we're doing at this point, just moving along. And things have gone smoothly over the summer, and it's been pretty slow. So that's about it.
Excellent. Thank you, Ms. Sessions. And so we'll move on to my report. And when I serve as chair, I try to meet with our stakeholders, the heads of the departments that are statutorily required to meet, to attend or be part of the Juvenile Justice Board. So I try to do that on an annual basis. And so since it's July, this would normally be the time when we have our elections. But if you all recall, earlier this year, we amended the bylaws and made the officer positions 2-year terms. So all of the officers have an additional year. So given that, I'm planning on trying to schedule some appointments and speak to the stakeholders to see kind of what their priorities are in terms of juvenile justice, and I'll report that back to the executive committee. Additionally, the ad hoc committee on duly served youth has concluded its work in regard to the mission that was assigned to us by Secretary Marstiller. So we're working on the final report. It's turned out to be much more work than I anticipated in terms of preparing that and vetting it. So I anticipate hopefully sometime in the near future, in the next several weeks, I'll have the final draft copy, which will be reviewed by the committee and then submitted to the secretary. I did have an opportunity to meet with the secretary on Wednesday in Tallahassee, and so she's very interested in not only the work that we do, but she expressed great confidence in our community and in Hillsborough County and our circuit board, which is illustrated by the fact that she asked us to specifically look into that particular issue. And so she sends her thanks to everybody for your dedication and your hard work and your historic participation in serving a juvenile justice population in Hillsborough County. The ad hoc committee, although we've concluded our work, we all decided collectively that we do have some momentum, though. We've got great people and great minds around the table, and so we've decided to continue meeting, and to continue meeting in order to look at the system overall and prepare as if none of the things that we propose to the secretary are ever going to happen. We still have an issue with duly served youth not being served properly in our community. And so the committee has decided to continue meeting and kind of figuring out what we can do locally with the existing resources that we have to come up with a system that works better for that population of children. And so the next month, our meeting is going to be an overview of the dependency system and hopefully an overview of the delinquency system. And we're going to start from there and kind of see where it takes us. So we'll continue working on that. And I think that nullifies the ad hoc status of that committee as well. So I would suggest moving that up as one of our priorities, since we're going to have basically a subcommittee working on it. Is there any objection to that from anybody? Okay. And our annual report is due in August, so I'll be working on that and submitting it to the department as well. Any questions for me? Okay, well, we'll move on to old business. I don't believe we have any new business, but old business, we have been talking about a juvenile justice progress report. And Mr. Parkinson, do you have anything you'd like to share?
Absolutely. There's been a number of meetings to discuss where we need to go with it. We've also had some feedback from a number of stakeholders. Probably the best way to put it is, according to Lieutenant Royka, that this is a system report card. So I think I'm going to use that name moving forward. Dr. Tembo has actually, knowing what was coming down the pipeline, has met a number of times with Civil Citation just to see where they're at. Of course, we've had some significant changes to our Civil Citation program recently. There's a lot of transition right now in terms of the new cases that are coming in. So we realize it's probably premature to take any kind of closer look at what they're doing. We really need to see 6 months, a year of work on their part with the new eligibility criteria to determine what their unmet needs might be. So that leaves us with the other areas that we've talked about. Legislative changes, process improvement here at the local level. After talking this over with court administration, we realized we probably need a subcommittee to get together a couple times to define a scope of work for this project. I'm willing to share that and move forward on it as this group is in agreement. I don't imagine this being a long-term work effort. I'm thinking 1 or 2 meetings would do it. But again, we've gotten lots of good feedback recently in terms of the areas that we might want to address on this. So my ask to the group is let's form a subcommittee to create a scope of work and then put the scope of work out there.
I'll consider that in the form of a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Congratulations, Chairman Parkinson.
Now, the chairman would like a few volunteers to sit on the subcommittee. By show of hands. So I got Kurt, Yvette, and Judy.
And Rocky.
And Rocky, thank you.
And I would ask that you just notify me in advance of the meeting so I can include those dates and locations on the public notice.
We absolutely will do, and of course, any meeting that I chair also goes up on the county's website and is publicly
Excellent.
noticed.
Thank you so much. Okay, appreciate your leadership and your work on that, Mr. Parkinson. Thank you very much. Okay, so we will move on to the presentation portion of our agenda. And I would like to ask Mr. Johnson and Mrs. Blumberg to step up to the podium, and I'll turn the gavel over to Davia, and perhaps she can introduce the
Sure.
presentation.
Sure. So good morning, everyone, again. I'm super excited this morning to have the opportunity. Thank you for the opportunity to present to this board. Sarah and Howard serve as the chair and co-chair of our upcoming project, and I'll allow them to tell you all more about that.
So good morning. My name is Sarah Blumberg. Most of you all know me. I am now the program specialist at PACE Center for Girls. I would like to introduce my fabulous partner, Mr. Howard Johnson. He is the project coordinator and a great teammate. And we are going to get started talking to you about the federal grant we recently received and the participation we're asking for from our stakeholders. Take it away.
Good morning, and thank you for the accommodation. So our topic for our presentation today is supporting system reform and collaboration to promote overall well-being of at-risk girls in Hillsborough County. And this is replicating the model implemented in Broward County. We've already done our introduction, so we'll dive right in. So a little information about PACE. In 1985, PACE Center for Girls began as an alternative to institutionalization or incarceration for girls. PACE is now nationally recognized as a model for reducing recidivism and improving school success, employment, and self-sufficiency amongst girls by the Annie E. Casey Foundation, Children's Defense Fund, National Mental Health Association, National Council on Crime and Delinquency, and the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention. Since 1985, we have grown from 1 center to 21 centers across the state of Florida. And we're also in Georgia as well. PACE Hillsborough. PACE Center for Girls in Hillsborough County has been serving this community since 1998. We opened our doors in Tampa, serving 40 girls, and with community and state support, we have now grown to serve more than 3,200 girls to date and help them with their academic and social service needs. Our mission is very simple but powerful, and it is that PACE provides girls and young women an opportunity for a better future through education, counseling, training, and advocacy.
Okay, so why are we here talking to you today? We are very excited to have received an Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention grant to replicate a project that was started at the center in Broward County. That is an existing project that continues to move forward. The replication sites that have received a grant include Lee County, ourselves in Hillsborough County, and Bibb County, Georgia. So the project goals with the grant, we want to lead a collaborative group that is composed of organizations from the county to support reform activities, and that is geared towards helping at-risk girls reduce confinement and achieve success. The second step is to identify the issues that are affecting the girls in the community who are at risk using research and data analysis. And then the third step in this first part of the project is to explore potential service gaps in the community, to develop a strategy to address issues identified in local community areas. It should be noted that we are looking holistically at the entire girl, not just at the juvenile justice system. We want to see where we can catch at-risk girls even earlier than when they've made contact with the system. So we are excited about taking a look at what we have in Hillsborough, which we know is plentiful and very helpful, and where we might be able to strengthen those goals.
So we are going to be using a results-based accountability methodology, and we will use this to develop what is known as a turn the curve report. So what is results-based accountability? What it is a data-driven decision-making process that helps communities and organizations move from merely talking about problems to developing solutions for those problems. So what it does is it starts with the ends and works backward towards the means. So for example, if we say that we want to look at, in Hillsborough County, all kids succeeding in schools, well, we will start with that big picture objective and we would work our way back. So what we would do then is say, what are our measurables? And our measurables for looking at all children succeeding in schools could then be something like graduation rates. So we would look at the Hillsborough County School District website, and we would find data that shows us what's going on with our high school graduation rates, and we would identify those communities and those schools where those graduation rates are lower, and then we would take a look at those. We would put councils and bodies together like this to take a look at where we need to go, the direction we need to go in, create benchmarks, and move towards solving those problems to increase our graduation rates in those areas where they need to be increased. So that's how, just a brief overview of how the results-based accountability model works. So, Broward's project. Broward's project started in 2017, and they created a Girls Coordinating Council where they formed a partnership with the Children's Services Council of Broward County. They produced a Turn the Curve report that looks at the work and turns the curve. Just as it says, they turn the curve from what the problems are to solving those problems. Some of the things that they did down in Broward County that were very effective, psychoeducational group services at the local juvenile detention center. That was called Girl Circles. Girl Circles is a structured group process that is gender-specific, strength-based, and trauma-informed. Our reach therapists from our Broward PACE go into the detention center, and they run these groups on a weekly basis. The groups are relationship-based. They build resiliency, and they teach the girls skills training, skills in anger management, skills in communication, skills in conflict resolution. The groups also allow these girls to use their voices to share their lived experiences, to engage in self-reflection, and to also discuss their future goals with each other. So it's a very, very robust psychoeducational group. They also have an FTA, Failure to Appear, education and material program. They found that a number of youth were being detained because they had failure to appears. And what they did to try and stem the tide of the increases was to provide them with little small cue cards, so to speak, where the material for when their court date was, which room, where they needed to go, phone numbers to contact people. And so they found out that, by doing these things, which they considered the low-hanging fruit that they could tackle immediately and possibly get some great results, they had some decreases in the FTA problem. They also gleaned from their work and their data a status of girls and young women report, and that's something that we will be looking into as well.
So now we want to talk about our possible areas of increased collaboration and growth in Hillsborough. Next slide. And I still have to read to you about data. So this is the Hillsborough girls arrest trend from fiscal year 2014-15 to 2017-2018. And we do see that there has been a slight decrease in girls arrests in Hillsborough. Next slide. However, in looking at school arrests in Florida, in the fiscal year 2017-2018, these are the 6 largest counties by population, and Hillsborough was by far the highest number of school-based arrests. These are arrests on campus during school hours, and we were at 599. We also take a look at, again, as always, keeping in mind the race and ethnicity issues that we face. There is a disproportionality, obviously, between youth of color and white youth being detained. And there are, obviously, the largest disparity is with the Black community, with 55% of the youth that have been detained are Black, and they only represent 20% of the community. Those numbers should look more equal. So how do you get involved? I'm so glad you asked. We have already sent out some materials to some of the shareholders, and we have received an amazing, amazing response, so much so that we've had to change to a larger venue. So what we're asking is, let's sit around a table and figure out how do we use the innovative collaboration that is already in place in Hillsborough and serves as a beacon across the state of how to collaborate within this system to be more successful, particularly in treating at-risk girls? And what enhancements or system changes can we reasonably pursue within the time allowed by the OJJDP grant? So we want you to join our team. Just go ahead, next one. We are establishing a girls coordinating council. That's what Davia was referring to. We are co-chairs, Howard and myself, of this new girls coordinating council. We will be collecting and analyzing the data, not only from the Department of Juvenile Justice, but from the school board, from various agencies in Hillsborough County to determine where we are at now. We want to create an action plan of how we can make those numbers better. And then by that point, that should be pretty close to the end of the year. We have a one-year OJJDP grant. However, we are hopeful that grant will be renewed. It has been renewed in Broward, and they were able to continue their work. We would like to do the same, and we hope to do so, and then go on and take action using that plan as our guide. So the first meeting of the Girls Council is next Friday, same time, 10 a.m. We have determined where we are meeting. We are meeting at the courthouse on the second floor in the second floor training room. Gina Justice and her assistant have been kind enough to, on very short notice, make that room available to us. We're very grateful towards both of them. And anyone who has not received an invitation, who is interested in attending and becoming a part of this coordinating council, please see myself or Howard after the meeting, or shoot us an email, text, however you prefer to contact us, and we would be more than happy to have you join our team. But we have had an amazing response. We've got over 20 invitees that have accepted already. So we are going to have a large table, but we are happy about that. We're going to have a lot of different viewpoints. And I think that's going to make for a very robust council, and a lot of great work will be done as a result. And that's it. That's us.
Any questions, comments?
Yes.
Mr. Benjamin?
My first question is, everything is great, but the one component that I was looking for, maybe that's done by the other side of PACE, is the career and vocational side for the girls. Is that done by the other side of?
The other side, yes. It absolutely is done in our day program. So we have a full day program that serves 67 girls on site, providing academic services. And one of the main components of that academic service is our PACE Works program, where we're providing career and vocational curriculum and experiential training for our girls. So that is absolutely, PACE has a very holistic approach to the services that we provide to our girls. So we are on it, Mr. Benjamin.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, well, thank you both very much, and I look forward to the work that you're going to be doing over the next year or two.
We look forward to sharing it with you, Chairman. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to present, Elvin.
And so we had a second presentation scheduled for today from Success for Kids and Families, and Missy Ross, is a bit under the weather. And so she asked if we could postpone her presentation from today until our September board meeting. So without any objection, we'll go ahead and schedule her for September. And also Dr. Dembo has a colleague, Dr. San Sebastian, who is working on a project. And Dr. Dembo has asked if his colleague can come and make a presentation in September as well. So we're booked up for the next meeting already. And that being said, is there anyone from the public that wishes to make any comments? Okay, we'll move on to announcements. Lieutenant?
Yes, thank you. I sent around a flyer that let everybody take a look at here. Next Tuesday evening at 5:30 p.m., we are having Tampa Police is hosting a community event, a community town hall meeting, connecting youth and communities with law enforcement. It is hosted by the or put on by the Police Training Institute. We are partnering with two other community groups, Greater Mount Carmel Development Corporation and Miracle Outreach. They will be providing youth for the panel as well. There'll be a panel of youth and law enforcement for the community, and it'll be an open forum town hall meeting. The goal of it, obviously, is to strengthen the relationship between the youth and law enforcement. And on Thursday, Friday, in addition to that, we will be doing training for youth who have been a part of a listening group with the PTI. They'll be going through some training on how to interact with law enforcement. At the same time, law enforcement will be going through training on how to interact with youth in a more effective manner. Then in the afternoon on Friday, they'll be role-playing. So youth become police become the youth, and we'll see how that goes. That should be a lot of fun. But we'd like to invite everybody to the town hall meeting, and we would ask that all of our community partners, through your contacts, if you could assist. I'll send this to Mr. Martinez in an email, this flyer, but if you could push this out to through your contacts, we'd greatly appreciate it. The Police Training Institute would love to see 200 people attend the town hall meeting. We have a venue that's large enough to handle that. A meal will be provided. So I know it's right at 5:30. That makes it a struggle for a lot of parents trying to feed their families. So they're gracious enough to provide a meal for everybody who attends that evening. So again, it's next Tuesday at 5:30 p.m. They can go to eventbrite.com to register. That way they know how much food to provide for that evening. All right.
Can you tell us where it is?
Yeah, I'm so sorry. Yes, thank you. Reagan Park Community Center, which is located at 1200 East Lake Avenue. 1200 East Lake Avenue. Again, I have a flyer. There's some floating around. And if you don't have one, I'll give you mine, and I will make sure that I forward this to Mr. Martinez, and he can also push this out through email if you would, please. Any other questions? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Ms. Boatwright, do you have any announcements?
Yes, at the sign-in table, there's 2 flyers. One we've already referenced. It's the information on the training that's coming up on implicit bias. The second flyer is the juvenile arrest avoidance flyer that law enforcement gives to youth and parents when they issue a civil citation. That flyer has been updated. The only changes include telephone numbers on how to contact the public defender's office, and then it additionally adds the court seal. So I put it on the back table in case some of the partners wanted to take a look at it. The second announcement is that Elvin was kind enough to circulate a position vacancy for the diversion program. We've got a court counselor position. The closing date has been extended to July 31st. So if there's some appropriate individuals that you know, please share that information. And that's it.
Any other announcements? Well, I'd like to congratulate Angela Hammock, who is here. She's been the supervisor in the Bays, Florida JDAP office for the last several years, and she's recently been promoted to Regional Director of Diversion Services in our organization. So congratulations, Angela. And sitting right next to her is Corey Shipley, who has been a senior case manager and is now going to supervise the Tampa office. So if you have not had an opportunity to meet Angela or Corey, please take a moment to do so. And congratulations to you both. Okay, is there any further business? Seeing none, we will stand adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you.